Hey, welcome to the Stephanie Stevens Show, where I help you discover the power of communication and the keys that unlock the doors to freedom in every area of your life. Today, John Butruccio joins us, and he has become not only one of my own personal success coaches, but a very dear friend. John is an entrepreneur, a business consultant, and leadership development trainer, and he's got more than 30 years of leadership experience in business and production management. And as a result of several years of leadership training with world-class mentors and coaches, he's committed to a lifetime of personal development, and he shares his wisdom and his knowledge with us. We are honored and privileged to have him as a regular guest now on the Stephanie Stevens Show podcast. Just a side note now, his services include executive coaching for entrepreneurs who really do wish to sharpen their skills and leadership training for management at all levels. I can tell you firsthand, he has made a tremendous impact on my own business and even how I train my managers and employees. So I am incredibly grateful we get to have John with us, John Butruccio of Success Paradigm. So nice to have you back, John. Thank you so much for spending time with us again today. Love having you on the Stephanie Stevens Show podcast, and I especially love it when we get to do the video portion because it just kind of brings the conversation to life.
It does, yeah. Big difference. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So we had a conversation about narcissists, a narcissistic culture, and how these days we are seeing the prevalence of this type of behavior, the bully type behavior, more than ever before. And in the last episode we spent together, we unpacked a little bit of what are the signs and symptoms of this bullying or narcissistic behavior. We even went into narcissistic abuse, what that feels like on the receiving end, and some of the things that we can do about it to mitigate our relationship with or our interference with or our or subjecting ourselves to that type of bullying behavior. So when we finished off there, we said next time, that's this time, that we would get into a little bit of sort of the idea behind why people do this. What is it about this personality that causes them to behave in these ways? And then what can we do about it? And John, I know that we said we were going to explain sort of why narcissists do what they do. I want to caveat that by saying, take the label and set it off to the side.
Right.
Because John and I have been very clear. Call a thing, and in your mind it becomes a thing, right? So we understand that we're not clinically diagnosing anybody. And really, it's not your job to do that either. The point here is if you are feeling and experiencing some of the things that we talk about, like narcissistic abuse, gaslighting, being put in a position where there's never a win for you. It's the carrot and the stick phenomenon where you're rewarded for certain things and then you're punished for other things. If you're experiencing this, it doesn't matter what it's called. It doesn't matter. It's affecting you in a negative way, and that's what matters. And so that's why we want to address it, because John and I have interfaced, especially in the last year or 2 years, with so many people who have been victimized by this type of behavior that we really have spent a lot of time coaching and supporting and consulting and guiding people who have suffered as a result. So get rid of the label. We'll put it under the umbrella of narcissistic tendencies, behaviors, etc. But even if it's not a clinical diagnosis of, NPD or narcissistic personality disorder or cluster B personality disorder, which is where narcissism fits, along with borderline, along with antisocial personality disorder, along with histrionic personality disorder, all of those are under an umbrella. Again, put them over here. These are spectrum-like characteristics of behaviors that, regardless of a diagnosis, you will come in contact with, chances are, in today's day and age. So we just want to guide you and support you and have the conversation. How's that for a place to start, John?
That's perfect. It is. You've done a great favor to your listeners by that statement right there.
Thank you.
It doesn't matter what you call it.
Yeah.
Because me, most of us are not trained to diagnose.
Hmm.
You know something? The behavior, bullying behavior is bullying behavior. Gaslighting is a behavior. Doesn't need a title,
Right.
but learning how to navigate that behavior.
Yes. Yeah.
So is
It
a
doesn't need a title. You just know it when you feel it. You
yeah,
just
Holly?
know it when you experience
Yeah,
it.
yeah. Or if you become victimized by it. So I guess
Yes.
key word being victimized, learning how not to be victimized by it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
S- So,
Hmm.
John, why do people behave in this way?
You know, I think about it all the time. Um, Especially the last couple of years, I've been observing that behavior a lot. And my clients and the folks that you and I worked with, all, uh, I hate to use the word victimized, but that's what it is. They're uh, horribly hurt by that behavior. So I'm not sure. You know how you mentioned earlier. Why do they do it?
Hmm.
If it is under being a narcissist, they don't even know themselves, right?
Hmm. Chances are they don't. Yeah.
I mean, it's just something that they are. It's a there's something wrong going on up there, right?
Hmm.
But I always ask myself, it's not about why, but they do it, whoever it is. The question I was going to ask you, actually, in your professional knowledge of all of it, is could some of it just be learned behavior?
Um, sure. I think those that are clinically diagnosed, it is so there's mimicked behavior based on environment, etc. I think what tends to happen, and from what I've understood and learned about these types of personalities, is there's a very deep seated crack in the personality or in the psyche early on in childhood based on a series of events, based on a series of environmental events, oftentimes having to do with um, a couple of conditions in parenting, the lack thereof, or the overindulgence of a parent to a child, wherein the child is the superstar, they are an extension of the parent, they are God incarnate. They are everything in the whole wide world. And all of that focus and attention goes on that child. And
Right,
the expectation then for the child is that they are these things, hence, they must perform in these ways, hence, they are responsible for the well being emotionally of the parent. And they will take on specific roles and basically dance as they're told to and instructed to please the parent and stay safe in the environment. um, there are other situations where it's quite the opposite, and a child is neglected to the degree that, in order to, or abused to a degree that, in order to protect their own fragile psyche, they have to disassociate themselves from their person, from the real them who is being abused, the real them who is not good enough to be loved, not good enough to be cared for, not good enough to be nurtured or considered. They have to split off and protect that fragile portion of themselves, hence creating an alter ego, this bravado, this mask, this shell of a person, shell of a personality that is not the authentic them. It is not true and authentic to who they are in their nature. It is something they create. And that's how they navigate the world. They navigate the world through the lens of this false persona, this created personality that will act interference, run interference for the world to try to prevent themselves from being injured or damaged or hurt psychologically or emotionally any further than they already have been. This is why you hear the phrase narcissistic injury. When somebody with these characteristics is injured, um, there will be retribution. And it can look like a discard, or it can look like a very visceral punishment. It can look like punishment uh, in order to prevent the subject from ever doing it again. for making sure that they understand you're not going to punish me in this way. You're not going to publicly humiliate me in this way. I will bury you. If you attempt to expose my mask, expose me, take the mask off. I mean, they're pretty punitive in their responses to narcissistic injury. They often fly into a rage. They often engage, in smear campaigns. That's very, very common. You and I have seen firsthand smear campaigns by people who have been narcissistically injured. And the injury can just simply look like you, John, for example, telling the truth about a situation that individual was involved in, and they take it so personally because you're getting too close to damaging their public image that now they must strike out against you to discredit you so that nobody looks at you or listens to you.
Hmm.
You're on the discard list now. You're out of
Right.
here. They will replace you with somebody that can provide the supply, because remember, it's all about supply. They will replace you with somebody that can fulfill that role of the supply that you were once providing for them.
Mhm. And that umbrella fits the narcissistic injury. That's the same behavior then, basically, right?
Yeah.
Are they mimicking it? Or?
No,
No?
they're in defense mode. So if
Oh,
they feel,
I
whether
see.
it's intentional or non intentional, if they feel harmed or hurt by you or injured in any way, shape, or form by you, their fragile psyche will lash out
Okay.
in punishment mode to discredit you, publicly humiliate you, so that nobody looks at you for the truth about who they really are, what they're involved in.
And,
That's automatic. That's an automatic defense mechanism.
yeah, and that makes it even more challenging on even how to set boundaries around people like that. I mean,
Right.
you right?
Mhm.
How does one even set a boundary when that's being thrown at you, right?
Um, right. Well, you and I have talked about bullies before, and there are a couple of theories in terms of how to handle bullies, for example. Um, and here's one of the things that seems to be true about people who exhibit narcissistic like tendencies. If they are not important to you, they are injured. So not feeding the monster, and by monster I mean the behaviors, the supply. By not feeding the supply, there are a couple of techniques. One of them is called gray rock. And that is where if you have to engage them, you engage them with absolutely no affect or emotion whatsoever. You are a gray rock. You're an inanimate object. You provide no charge. They love the charge. They feed off the
Mm.
charge. They love the drama of it all. They love the emotion of it all because it makes them feel important. If I can get a rise out of you, I'm important. If I can't get a rise, if I can't charge you, if I can't emotionally hook you, you're telling me and showing me I don't mean very much to you, and that scares the hell
Mm.
out of me.
Well, that certainly explains the last 2 years of work that we've done together, right?
Yes, it does.
Like
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
it describes it to a T.
yes.
So some of our conversation today can be, which we often talk about, how to deal with that.
Yeah,
And what you just said does it. The gray rock.
yep. And the simple reiteration, because one of the techniques that these individuals like to use is a diversion. Divert, divert, divert. You're talking about what color the sky is right now, and they're going to tell you about their new pair of brown shoes. They will do anything to deflect attention off of themselves, bad attention off of themselves, and they will automatically make the thing somebody else's fault. So they scapegoat, they victim blame, and they distract. I mean, they cause a diversion. Don't look at what I just did. Look at that. Look at that. That's more important, right?
Right.
So anytime somebody calls out their own behavior, they will flip the narrative upside down and make it your fault, or accuse you of being something horrific and horrendous that far outshadows whatever it is that you just highlighted that they did or they were engaged in. And so we have seen so many people stand up to the bully, for example, by telling the truth and saying, no, I have evidence right here of this, and this. And John, it's always going to come down to who has the bigger platform or bully pulpit in some cases. If I've got a megaphone and I've got an audience that is used to seeing me and my, in my bully pulpit or at my megaphone, and all you have is a room full of people, in theory, I win because my message carries to more and I will feel like I have won. But one thing you can't escape is you can't escape the laws of the universe, and you can't escape ultimate justice because it will find you every time. So while they think that they're getting away with this for a measure of time, ultimately there is I believe, an unconscious or subconscious fear that knows this is going to catch up with them at some point because it must, because it is the way. But one of the things I think that would be valuable for you and I to talk about is how people become subject to this in the first place. We're smart people. My audience, they are smart people. Okay. People in general who listen to podcasts are people who are very entrepreneurial spirited. They're very, they're cultivating their own leadership skills, personal mastery and self-mastery and personal development. That's why they listen. They want to learn. And so they're smart. And it's really a kick in the rear end to think that you are somewhat or want to believe that you're smart, you're intelligent, and yet we fall into these relationships or situations wherein we have been tricked and duped by the narcissist or the person with these types of tendencies, clinical or no. And we, in retrospect, go, what was I thinking? What happened? I thought I was smarter than this. What happened? Right? And so there is a progression. You don't just jump in from the frying pan into the fire right away. There is a progression that this personality leads you through. Okay? They start slowly pushing your boundaries out. They start slowly working on you in your belief system, in your right and wrong. They start slowly working on gaslighting you when you say something specific about one of your core beliefs or something that you stand for and believe in. They will take that and they can, and sometimes do, weaponize that. They know you're conscientious. They know you believe in good things. They know you stand for righteousness, or whatever you stand for. And they will come to know that is a vulnerability for you because it's important to you. Anything that's important to you, you are vulnerable in, right? So what happens is they will work on smart people's conscientious nature, their nature to do right, their desire to see wrongs righted. And they will start to fiend being in that same space with you, but then they'll slowly push your boundaries out. They'll start to test you in ways that make you feel a little bit uncomfortable. And then oftentimes they will question you for feeling, what do you mean you're uncomfortable with this? How can that possibly be? I thought you believed in justice. This is a perfect, way to see justice served. They'll wear away at that. And we let them because we tend to give the benefit of the doubt. We don't want to believe the worst about people. We want to believe the best. So we let it ride and we go, well, that was weird. And we keep on. And then something else happens and it's like, wait a minute, that's also weird. Then we bring it to them and they come back with no, what's really weird is that you think that's weird. What's going on with you that you would think that's weird? Okay. So it's a slow boil. It's a slow progression of wearing down our right and our wrong and wearing down our own personal boundaries so that we are willing to accept more of what used to make us feel uncomfortable. To the point where we wake up one morning and we go, dear goodness me, I this is toxic and I'm being abused. This feels insane. Not everybody wakes up one morning with that,
Right.
unfortunately. A lot of people don't, but some do. And then they go back and they say, what was wrong with me? How did I find myself so vulnerable that I could land in that type of situation?
You bring up some really, really good points there. Getting back to the gray rock, um, I've come pretty close to mastering that, the gray rock, and not letting
Yes.
things like that or people like that get under my skin.
Mhm.
And but I do feel it though. It's not like I don't feel it. Just don't let them see. And part of my conflict resolution trainings that I do, the workshops, and one of the things, key elements in resolving conflict is by what we are just talking about now, is to not let it bother us. Even someone who just wants to be right, because usually an argument is just two people that want to be right. They're just arguing,
Yeah.
and when ego gets involved, all of a sudden it changes the dynamics because the ego wants the other person to be wrong. It's no
Yeah.
longer about wanting to be right anymore. So I
Mhm.
see that in the last couple of years, especially, but now that I reflect, it's been decades of observing this behavior. That the more gray rock I am, it almost seems the harder they try to get under the skin.
Mhm.
They just ramp up the efforts
Yeah.
higher and higher and higher until they think they've won. And I just let them win.
Well, because you're not giving them their dopamine hit.
Yeah.
One emotional charge and they're good. Like,
Yeah.
ha ha, got him. All right. He still cares. I still got him. He's still on the line. Excellent. Um, so they will classically, they will try for a while.
Yeah.
But at some point they will give up and they'll turn to somebody else because
Right.
they need to continue garnering supply. But John, the trickiest thing that I think our audience, our friends who listen would benefit from is learning how to emotionally detach. It's one thing to be able to act your way through it and to be able to fake, for lack of a better word, this gray rock. I don't care. I'm impartial. No emotion here. In reality, we're pretty sensitive people and we do care and we
Mm.
feel it and we are in a state of emotional pain. We're just not sharing it with them because that would be exactly what they want to hear.
Mm.
And we know it. So the biggest struggle I have heard from people is I can do that. I can disengage. I can do gray rock. I can't stop from feeling as though it's eating me up on the inside. And we have to learn how to support people internally
Mhm.
with those feelings.
Yes, there is. I think that's where the personal mastery comes into play,
Mm,
that's internal work for us, for whoever, me, you, anybody that wants to master the personal mastery part of all this is how not to truly let that bother us.
yeah.
Because in the lower level of things, if it's about who stole my M&Ms, which is almost always what it's about to me, that level of absurd behavior, I'm better than you, whatever it is that goes on in their head, right?
Mhm.
But then when it's not about just M&Ms, and now we're talking about um, an organization that's trying to form or do business,
Mhm.
then it changes the dynamics now. If you're an employee and there's employees doing this to each other, there's a lot more at stake than just someone's M&Ms being stolen.
Yeah. Somebody's livelihood is at stake.
Exactly. And
It's a
then
big
and then
deal.
when it goes even higher than that, when the that behavior comes from management,
Mhm.
then we're like 10 times the severity and what's at stake.
Mhm.
Because the employee, if especially if they just started, they don't know what's going on. Then there's this power play going on, narcissistic behavior. there is a lot at stake. It's really a shame too, especially at that level. But
Yeah.
if we talk about just being out in the world, right? Just people in general, that's one thing. Work is
Mhm.
another, and most challenging is family.
Yes.
Because you can walk away from all the other stuff. Technically, you could go get another job, and you don't have to hang out at the flea market, whatever it is that you go to, right?
Right.
But family, what do you do with that?
Mhm. What do you do with that?
Well, I'm going to go right back to learning personal mastery, how to truly, truly not let things bother you. I love that gray rock analogy, though. Gives a little
Mhm.
bit of a life of its own in how we do things, and
Yeah. One of the things that we talked about is, um, why people do some of the things that they do,
yeah,
and the shock and awe in finding out they actually truly enjoy seeing other people hurt. Do you have any idea why that is?
there's a brutal truth to that, and I think
Mhm.
that's why people who are subjected to that behavior have such a hard time with it. Is because it's
Yeah.
hard to imagine someone wanting to see other people in pain, or that they would actually enjoy inflicting it.
Mhm.
I reflect on that a lot in my trainings, especially.
Mhm.
I don't, what do you even say to it? It's I use the word often. It's unbelievable. How can that
Yeah.
be?
Yeah.
Well, something earlier you said that I think you were referring to karma.
I was referring to the ways of the universe, universal
Universe.
laws. Yeah.
Somewhere
Justice.
along the way, they're gonna meet. They're gonna meet their match. Somebody's gonna come along and put them in their place.
Mhm.
I don't know if it'd be another narcissist or just somebody that's brash enough to tell them off.
You know
And
what's so interesting about that, John, is that I think it comes down to, I mean, ultimately, spiritually, yes, justice will be served because it must. Justice is real, and so at some point, things will come full circle. But what is so curious is that, there the platform that the person has, or for example, if you're a celebrity and you have access to the news media, you can tell whatever story you want.
right,
If you have a victim, the victim does not have the same reach because they don't have access to the same audience, for example, that you do. And so they are left feeling unheard and helpless and out of control because they're telling the truth, and they can't get the message out. They're not heard because these types of bully type individuals go to great lengths to diminish and discredit. But you and I have also seen situations wherein people stood up, very tall, very loud, and very strong against the bully.
mm,
And, you learn as a kid, I learned that the best way to handle a bully was to stand up to him, because then they realized that you were not vulnerable and that you could not be victimized. So it's very curious that, um, when you stand up to a bully, or a narcissist, in many cases, again, the punishment, it depends on the audience they have or the draw that they have. They have no problem, let me put it this way. They have no problem creating stories or narratives about you that are so totally untrue, but just believable enough to make people think twice. Maybe he is really this, or maybe she really is secretly that, right? So it plants these seeds of doubt in order to diminish the credibility of the person speaking the truth or speaking out against or standing up to the bully. So it's very hard to know where to come down on this. Do you stand up and say, listen, I match your bad behavior with a series of truth, and this is what you're doing, and this is what we're seeing, and this is what we're experiencing. Now deal with it. Or is it best to, and many counselors advise, disengage. You're never gonna win. You're not gonna win because they don't care. They don't care about doing the conscientious or right thing. They only care about winning. They only care about the appearance, their own persona, and preserving their own shell of a persona they created. So what is your thought process on this? Is it best to confront the bully firsthand and say, I see what you're doing. I know what you're doing. This is what it's called. And I'm not taking it from you. Or is it best to just slide away, disengage, and leave them on red, as it were?
Good question. So what to do? Obviously, walking away is easy, and
And
sometimes, I mean, it all depends on what where we are at in our own head. I'm going
yeah,
to keep referring back to the ego wants to fight back. The ego wants to
yeah,
defend, justify.
yes,
If it's a narcissist or anyone with that kind of behavior, they're going to love the fact that you're calling them out. They don't care. They don't have. They don't care. There's no conscience there.
yeah,
At least what in my experience of what they're showing to me, to us.
right,
They don't have a conscience. So um, calling them out without when we put everything in the form of a question. Remember we talked about that.
yes. I
So we're
love
really
that.
not calling them out on anything. We're just asking them a question. Do I sense you trying to bully me? Ask it instead of saying you are a bully.
Yeah.
Do I sense that you're trying to bully me? Do I
Mm,
sense that you're being like a seventh grader here? Or just
yeah.
that
Oh,
kind
I,
of.
I love that. Or why are you yelling? Why are you
Why are
yelling?
you?
I'm not yelling. You're yelling.
Yeah. And goes, well, you just yelled back. So,
Hey, you
but of
yelled
course,
back. Why? Why? Why are you? Why are
and
you
especially
yelling?
doing it in this manner of just ask
Hmm.
them because we're not charged anymore. They've lost their power.
Yeah.
You know. You brought up earlier that whoever has the loudest megaphone and they're out yelling, their megaphone's this big and ours is like this big.
Hmm.
Most likely they're gonna think they won. They're just people are gonna hear them louder. I'm still one to believe that the truth always wins.
Hmm.
It might take time, more time than we want to allow or expect, but in time, eventually they'll lose their audience. The truth will show. The behavior. So what I wanted to bring up to you also, that behavior attracts like, would you say?
Yes.
No matter what we call it, they seem to congregate.
Yeah.
Well, depending on what the organization is and if they want to grow, there's going to be a certain point in time when nobody's going to want to be part of that.
Hmm.
I believe that the people that have those behaviors are far less in number than the folks that want peace, love, and joy.
Yes. I argue oftentimes that it's because at some point you'll be the victim. Just when you think you're at the cool kids table, just when you think that you are in with the
Yeah.
almighty, all powerful Wizard of Oz, or whatever role they play in whatever social circle or organization or whatever, just when you think you're in the inner circle and safe, you will become the victim.
Right.
Because it doesn't take much to
Sure.
try for them to engage in this triangulation behavior, wherein now you're here, and now I'm with somebody else talking about you all of a sudden, and you're the odd man out. You're not in favor anymore. Now you're being picked on. And that's common. Or a very common thing with these types of personalities is called splitting. You are an angel one day and you are a devil the next. And there is just no middle ground. You're, it's one or the other. And they will make sure that everybody else knows what you are today. And if they woke up on the wrong side of the bed or an email caught them the wrong way that they saw that you sent, you're the devil and you're going to get it. And so again, it takes people back because they think when they're in the inner circle, they're safe. They're part of it. You're never safe. You're never safe with these personalities because you are simply collateral.
Right.
You're simply supply. You can easily be replaced. And we've heard them say as much. You're just a such and such. Thank you for your service. Goodbye. Exit stage left and be quiet while you're doing it. We've got a replacement waiting in the wings for you. Vaya con Dios. And the person is stunned and shocked because they thought that they were important and they thought that they were doing something important, fulfilling this role. And it turns out, no, you never were. You were just one of the pieces or pawns on the board game. And now off you go. Easily disposable. That, John, is so painful.
Yes. So I'm going to go back to the personal mastery part.
Thank you.
No, it's so perfect. We all will know that personal, our own being, our spirit, is growing by these experiences because they're teachers.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
which is
still,
it's a hard concept, but when the epiphany comes up that I have mastered not allowing myself to get caught up in that drama. And you and I have experienced the worst of the worst, I believe. In my lifetime, it's the last 2 years in what we speak of is the worst I have ever seen, except for maybe Washington, D.C. That's another animal.
Yeah, I would agree.
Very similar.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So in personal mastery, you see, when somebody angers us, they own us. That's where I come from. And I will not allow anybody to own me because of the control that I have over my being, how I receive information, or I guess call it self-control. That just because somebody calls me a name doesn't mean I need to be angry. They just called me a name. So unless it's like life or limb,
Mm-hmm.
Literally physical harm is going to come to me, I need to step into another dimension of my being and do something about it. But if it's not physical harm to me or my family or my home, then they aren't renting space in my head.
So let me stop you there. I want you to walk us through what this looks like. So
Sure.
There's no imminent threat of danger to you.
Right.
But this is something that is shocking. It's untrue. It's not right. And you feel that emotional charge, right? You have a couple of options. I have made the mistake for years. I made the mistake. I could not type fast enough, banging away at the keyboard. Like, I am one of those people who instinctively responds far too quickly because I don't want one moment of time, not one little space, not one gap of time to go by wherein they think that they're going to get away with saying or doing this thing. It needs to be dealt with. It's wrong. It needs to be dealt with, right? And I'm supposedly the purveyor of all that is good and right. So I have to tell them it's wrong. So again, that is ego driven. That's me thinking, I know, I have the answer. Your answer is wrong. Mine is right. Wait, okay. All of that aside, we can control our behaviors. We can do things like create space. I am going to set a timer and I will not respond to this for X period of time, if at all.
Right.
I will not respond to this for 1 hour, for 3 hours, for 10 minutes. I will move away. I will get but we have to have something, John, very practical that we use as a tool because our emotions drive our behaviors to so many degrees that when somebody says something or does something or writes something, and in the form of an email we talk about, or a text message, we have to have an initial practical tool that will allow us to flip that switch off. That flight, fight, freeze, fawn switch has to be shut off, and we have to be able to create space. Or we will fall into being wrapped up emotionally. And if we don't respond right away, we will ruminate on it for a really long time and then respond after we've got all of our arguments squared away in our head, right?
Right.
So, tell us how, in terms of personal
Okay.
mastery, some techniques and steps to actually truly disengage.
Right. So it takes practice, Stephanie. And it's not going to happen just like this, but it could. And so if we understand the difference between reaction and responding,
Mhm.
so reaction is like right this second. That's
Yes.
reaction. The second something hits us, we don't like it for no matter how severe it is, just words or print. We need to put things into perspective here, where this is coming from, right?
Yeah.
And I believe we are all programmed to react. It's in there, trained, programmed, whatever you want to call it, from when we were just little kids.
Yeah.
And we need to undo that and learn how to respond. And sometimes responding can be minutes in the moment, right? Nothing irritates a bully or a narcissist more when you don't react.
Mhm. True.
You're already winning right there just by not reacting and just taking a minute to think about what you're going to say and just say, I need to give that some thought. I'll get back to you tomorrow.
Yeah.
See,
That's a challenge.
it is.
I know somebody who says, in a conversation where there's any pause at all for thought, hello, 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 hello,
Right.
hello.
Yeah. So
Hey.
this is where it takes practice, Stephanie. So in watching yourself and watching other people, knowing that the they own us when we react. It might even be
That's good.
subconscious, but
Say that again. They
they
own
own us. They own me if I react. Sometimes the reaction's good and joy and all right, excellent, right? But if it's because they're poking me in the eye and insulting me or whatever it is, it used to be for me reaction to want to fight back, the revenge, right? If you act on revenge, they say, dig two graves. Just
Yeah.
don't participate. We don't, and it takes practice. The first time, we're conscious of it. Now we're becoming more conscious. When we respond, we're conscious. I believe in taking deep breaths. Have you ever got hyperventilated from something running too fast or right?
Yes.
Have you ever done the breath, hold the breath for 1 second and hold it for
Yeah.
2 seconds?
Yeah. I've talked about, even in some of my podcasts, some breathing techniques like breathing. There's a box breathing, and then there's a double quick inhale followed by
Yeah,
a slow exhale, which
right,
immediately
right,
signals a calming response. Your nervous system is notified that there is no emergency,
right.
and so the heart rate can slow down, and the cortisol doesn't need to surge, the adrenaline doesn't need to surge. It start calming. There are some very quick, easy breathing techniques. That's a great idea, John, is to breathe right away. We forget to, because in a state like that, we tense up and hold our breath
Sure.
just instinctively, right?
Sometimes I've been practicing this and it's still, I'm still challenged by it. I still hyperventilate sometimes and in seconds it goes away or feel I took something personal. That's another good point here, right? Is why we're reacting is because we're taking something personal. Just because, Billy over there, the bully, says that, um, insults me because of my glasses or something stupid. Um, just because he said it doesn't make it true.
Yeah.
We have to learn it. It's a learn. We are undoing, however, what age we are, we're undoing what we've been programmed to do, is to react, to fight back, the lack of self-control. And it just takes time to do that. We have to be patient with ourselves. I believe, like you and I, like-minded people that I use this term jokingly, but the anti-bully gatherings. How do we do this? I think if you hang out with people that think the same way you do, you're not going to be around bullies and narcissists, and they won't
True.
survive. They won't survive. I call
True.
it my tribe.
Same.
The,
Same.
the folks that I don't see in 2 years, 3 years, and then we finally call on the phone or bump into each other. It's like no time went by.
Yeah.
So that's your tribe. That's what you want.
Yes. I'd like to talk also about warning signs and prevention because um, some of the things that you've talked about that will be our self mastery practice include right away understanding that anger means they own us. So if we give energy to the situation, the comment, the email, the text message, the behavior, we are actually acquiescing. We are feeding the monster, as it were, monster being behavior, not person. We're
Right.
feeding the monster, and that we are giving them the supply that they are actually seeking. They don't care if your response is good or bad. They just
Right.
want the energy behind it. That's the fuel. So they own us if we give that to them. So maintaining our own, being responsible for our own emotional energy.
Right there's the perfect point. Being responsible, because we're gonna feel anger. It's just natural human behavior, but it's what we do
Mhm.
with it. That if we're gonna give it to them, which is what they want, and then
Mhm.
at the end of the day, for why did I get angry over that?
Yeah.
We take responsibility.
Yeah, and responsibly process it. So rather than giving that energy to them, there must be a way that we can responsibly process that.
Mhm.
You know, maybe we
Well,
can vent
it
to
is,
somebody who will.
well, it's even
Yeah.
getting back to the personal mastery, right? And being angry with somebody in the moment because they called me a name, but learning how to not resent that person for the rest of my life because they
Yeah.
called me a name. You follow what I'm
Mhm.
saying? That learning, I guess, coming from a place of forgiveness.
Yeah.
They are who they are. They do what they do for whatever happened in their life to make them that way. Then be
Mhm.
okay with it. Just give them a prayer and okay.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
hand that over, release that.
I
Um,
believe so.
so
Yeah.
this so that's one way to deal with it is to process that emotion somewhere else. Don't give it to them. Write in
Yeah.
your journal, breathe. That deep breathing is phenomenal. And you can even be processing as you're deep breathing or doing those exercises. You can be emotionally processing, that came in real heavy. And now I'm just going to let that move through my body. I'm going to breathe it out. I'm going to get rid of that. I don't want it in me. I'm sending it out. I'm handing it over. I am not going to take responsibility for that negativity or that anger or energy. Understanding that it is not personal is another thing that you reviewed that
Right.
I think is phenomenal to highlight. Um, it is not. It's never about you. Change out your name and face for somebody else's. Today it's you, tomorrow it's somebody else. It's not personal because unfortunately, these types of personalities just, again, you are a means to an end. You are a commodity, and you can easily be replaced. So I think if you comprehend that, it depersonalizes everything right off the bat, and you don't have to feel bad for exiting stage left because you you understand and see, this is the behavior is indicating to me this is not somebody that I can have a long-term working relationship with or personal relationship with. Hence, it's better for me to go ahead and release them now, than wait for them to get mad at me and then they're going to do it publicly. There are ways to mitigate that. And I think what you've said, John, the processing that energy or the behavior responsibly, not giving it back to them, doing some breathing techniques in the moment is key, not taking it personally. All of those are hugely important, and continuing to pursue personal mastery, which will mean we recover faster.
Mhm.
We bounce back faster. We forgive quicker and easier. We divert our attention and energy into something productive that we really do enjoy, that we know is benefiting other people. But I want to talk with you before our time ends here in a few minutes about warning signs in the first place, because you and I have worked with so many people that saw some things that seemed strange and they tried to address it. And yet, over the course of time, letting all those little things pile up into a big thing. And the big thing always ends with a big kaboom. I'm sorry, it just does.
Mhm.
Um, how can we support people in seeing signs of narcissistic behaviors or bully-like behaviors early enough so that they can avoid ultimate, damage or fallout, or I guess, just a waste
Yeah,
of time,
yeah,
right? Wasting their time on something that isn't going to be productive or fruitful.
yes. Well, so you mentioned the red flag. So I get feedback quite often, especially, and I'm developing this new tribe here. I'm new to this area, 5 years now, but and some of the feedback I got is that I'm very guarded. So, and
Interesting.
I believe that that is because I'm an observer. And if I see red flags, there's a little bit of a wall. I'm friendly and I'm all about giving the hug, right?
Mhm.
Sharing and generous, but I am guarded to so that whomever I'm trying to befriend is worthy of my time and my friendship,
Yeah.
basically. So yeah, there's red flags, and I'd rather be called guarded and be and which is I check in with myself to make sure I'm not overly guarded. But they're
Mhm.
new in my circle of influence, so I'm going to be guarded. Yeah, whether they like it or not, I'm going to be guarded.
Yep.
But also to realize and that somewhere along the way that if I'm going to interact with these folks on a regular basis, then that guard has to come down somewhat
Mhm.
until a true friendship is formed or relationship or business venture.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? The
It does, yeah.
yeah,
I mean, I love the idea of being an observer in a new situation first and foremost, starting
yeah,
out as an observer, taking the time
yeah,
to scan the landscape. Who
yeah,
are you working with? What is the dynamic? What is the group dynamic as a whole? Is there a perceived leader? How do they treat other people?
yeah,
So much of leadership that you and I've talked about this is about how you've left people feeling. How do
right,
they feel when they've left your presence, when they've left a conversation with you? Regardless of whether there was an information exchange or not, how do you feel? Right. And I think that there are some very important red flags to be looking for that we are convinced to bypass. Our critical thinking, our critical factor will override or bypass some of the things we in the past would have seen as a red flag because we're being told by everybody around us, no, what? Nothing to see here. It's normal. It's good. It's right. You have to listen to yourself. You
yes,
have to listen to your instincts. When you feel something, something is there.
right,
Whether it's perceived or a misunderstanding that will eventually be cleared up, something is going on if
right,
you're asking questions and something doesn't feel right. And people are often so convinced to override that.
Hmm.
Oh, well, you're just being a little suspicious. Why are you so untrusting? Why do you have such a, and so we go, yeah, you're probably right. And we continue to acquiesce and get pulled down the line. But I would say, as it relates to, I don't care if it's a workplace, a volunteer organization, a relationship, a family member, there are a couple of things that seem to be similar with these types of personalities, John, that are just kind of classic across the board. Um, you're never going to hear them apologize. If you don't ever hear an apology from this person, that is a red flag.
Yes, it
The
is.
inability to apologize is a red flag. Okay. And I mean for things that people bring to their attention that they didn't even intend to do. But not being able to validate someone's feelings, right? To the point where they say, wow, I had no intention of making you feel that way or giving you this impression. I'm really sorry. If that's not on the table, watch carefully. I would argue watch carefully. Any thought on that? First red flag?
There are folks that have very covert. You know what I
Yes,
mean? They have this agenda to be really kind and sweet in the beginning, and then slowly,
absolutely.
you know, what I realize to have this might be somewhat guarded, right?
Hmm.
Knowing that even after all the guarding and the trusting time to make friendship, meaningful relationships, the risk is still there that they'll turn on you,
Mm,
that they'll try to victimize. They're just
yeah,
there. It's just going to happen. It's kind of like, don't ever let that your peaceful, loving being be squashed by one person. It's gonna
absolutely.
could happen anytime. Even your best friends could do it sometime.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
to
But
hurt,
if
grieve, and
that's right. That's right. Let yourself grieve. It's okay to grieve the loss of a friendship or even the loss of something that you thought existed that never actually existed.
yeah,
Because there are things that people get involved with that never truly existed. This this person, this individual set up a scenario for you to step into that was never going to happen. Richard Grannon I think he's a brilliant coach as it relates to narcissistic abuse and people who have suffered in narcissistic relationships, et cetera, who have a very difficult time leaving. And he's a phenomenal coach, but he will say, he uses the analogy of you were drawn in because you wanted to be, and this happens and we hear stories about this happens in Hollywood, but it happens everywhere. You wanted to be the best, most famous underwater photographer on the planet.
mm,
And they position themselves to you as the guy or gal who is responsible for the world's most well-known underwater photography magazine. And they position themselves to you in this way, like they're the one that can give you this very thing that you dream of, this very thing that you've longed for your whole life. They're it. Right. And in some cases, John, very vulnerably as a woman, who had been divorced and was a single mom for a long time, men can often come in or women in relationships and present themselves as tan ta tan tan. Here he is, the quintessential, dream man who treats you the way you want to be treated, says the right things to you, supports you, thinks you're the best thing since sliced bread, this, and this, and will give you the thing you longed for. They're positioning themselves to be the only one who can provide all of the things that you hoped and dreamed for. Over the course of the progression of time, the gaslighting, the wearing you down, the pulling out of your boundaries, you discover that person never actually existed. That was never them. That was simply a role that they were playing to hook. to hook you. And the same is true in anywhere. And Richard Grandin's analogy is you spend all of this time thinking you're working toward becoming the most famous underwater, photographer, only to come eventually to find out, they're the janitor at the school down the road. They're not even the thing that can be or grant you access to what you had hoped, dreamed, and desired. And they'll never let you know it, because once you start to find out this about them, they become less important to you, and they simply can't have that. They have to be that important to you in order to continue to string you along. We've seen this in volunteer organizations. Cults are famous for this. This is how they operate. There's a guru or hero set aside as sort of the quintessential god or idol, and everybody follows them, and they're the smartest and the wisest. They have all the answers. They do no wrong. And over the course of time, you find yourself in the middle of the situation wherein, 2 years ago, you would have looked from the outside and said, "Get out. It's a cult. What are you doing? Are you crazy? Look what's happening. What are they?" And again, because you've been promised things that you believe in, you are strung down the road. So I would say, keep your eyes open. As John has mentioned, be an observer. If somebody can't apologize when they've hurt somebody else, that is a stark, stunning red flag. They do not have empathy or compassion, and and humility may not be a friend of theirs. I would also say, lack of vulnerability, their inability to actually be honest and transparent. If they never, ever, ever want to share anything that goes on in their lives, that may be a sign that they don't ever plan on letting you in, and they want to know everything about you. All your deep, dark secrets, all the things that have brought you pain over the course of time, right? Because that can be weaponized. But they're not willing to share the same. That's a red flag, I think, as well. The inability to listen, the inability to actually listen, or the unwillingness to listen and hear. And John, one of the things you coach is listening is everything. Listening is 90% of a conversation in many cases, right? As it relates to good communication. I mean, if somebody can't hear you, they don't care what you have to say. You're not worth listening to them.
Yeah, can't or don't want to hear.
Can't or don't want to.
Or don't want to. You know what I'm saying? It's
That's right. And John, I would say another red flag may be the my way or the highway syndrome. The inability to work with anybody else, the inability to be a team player, the inability to hear feedback and then massage a game plan accordingly so that there's a mutual win-win. If it's a my way or the highway, I mean, I'm a business owner, John, so I struggle with this to some degree because there are things that have to be the way I say that they need to be. And it's just because I have the experience in the industry and I know what will work and what won't.
right.
But I'm open to feedback. And there are some things that I am happy to change or modify based on the team's feedback if it's working better for them. Right?
Absolutely.
What would you call that?
Well, in a business
Flexibility?
standpoint, right, it would be what I see that keeps businesses from growing, they stagnate at some point, is the inability for the owner to delegate. Is this my way or the highway? First thing I
Yeah.
look for, and it's always the thing I see. So I like to have suggest that they have what there's a term called company policy.
Mm-hmm.
So then it's not you, the owner, saying it, it's a company policy.
Yes.
But the key element here is to always be open to feedback. If somebody says, hey, the way that company policy is worded, they could give you really bad feedback of what they think about it and how it's not beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
And just listen to them. If it needs to be reworded, then you reword it. It's a company policy.
Yeah. That's
Then you're
good.
not guilty of upholding things, but you do need structure in an environment like that. You
Mhm.
have wonderful structure in your business, but you also have that wonderful mindset that you're willing to listen to people.
Well, I've had a wonderful coach. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
You've coached me through a lot of that, the importance of the listening and the depersonalization and the policy. That's my favorite. It's not personal; it's policy.
right,
Just check the policy. And if there is doesn't, if there isn't a policy to cross reference, we're going to make one right now. We're going to create it. Here we go. Here's
right,
the new policy
exactly.
as it relates to that issue.
Yeah, company policy doesn't have to be one page.
Yeah,
Might start out with one page, but it's going to end up in being 10 pages or
that's
more
right.
because you're refining, you're growing, and the more people that come in, the more um, how do I say, the more defined it has to be.
Yes.
Just
Yep.
and that
Yeah,
can
you got to
and
have the boundaries,
yeah,
structure.
and that can to some degree that's business. To some degree, a little bit different, but similar in families, and
Mhm.
then how you interact with people in your life.
That's right. That's good. Yeah, we need
Mm,
those types of standards and boundaries in every area of life. Truly, that's a really good point. We forget about that. We need that in our own relationships and families as well. Um, any other red flags that
mm.
you can think of, John, that people could be watching for to avoid wasting time or spending time in a situation that is really going to involve a bully or a narcissist? I think
Yeah.
we've talked about gaslighting, watching out for gaslighting and
Well, I wrote down a little note here about the warning signs, I guess, right?
Mhm.
First impressions are everything. So I
Yeah.
like to go with like the baseball analogy. Strike three, you're out.
That's
So the
good.
first thing, never judge anyone by the first time. Okay, the first time, okay. It is what it is. But if it's there the second time, now you're going to start paying attention. If it's there the third time, that red flag,
Yeah.
they might still be on my plate, just not in a circle. They'd be out here.
Okay.
A little bit. The bigger the red flag, the further they are away from my inner peace, sort of thing. And I
Absolutely.
guess the key thing here is to be patient, to not rush into friendships, relationships, jobs.
Mm. Good point.
Be patient. I know people are anxious and are excited maybe to go get a new job. But boy, I'm gonna be sitting there having long conversations with my new boss, if you will.
Mhm.
You have every right to ask them as many questions as they're asking you, right?
Good, yep, good point. Yeah, but most people don't.
I know it. Yeah, I see that.
Hmm.
So this
So be a
this
question asker. Yeah.
yeah, it's a lifelong endeavor in the personal mastery and the journey that we all take, um, and just to be patient with it, not rush, like learning
Yeah.
how to deal with a bully kind of thing. It's just or how to be responsive instead of reactive.
Yes.
Takes practice. So
That's right. It takes a
all good.
commitment and practice. Um, and that's why we continue to encourage diving into self-mastery,
Mm,
practicing these types of things. I will also say, if you're somebody who has experienced this or been in an organization or relationship or in a family dynamic wherein this dynamic existed, a bully or somebody with narcissistic behaviors or tendencies, the good news is that John always says they are your teacher. That is so hard to hear, and it's even harder to say. It's horribly painful in the beginning to say, so and so is my teacher. But the reality is, once you have overcome the visceral reaction of having to speak that out of your mouth and acknowledge it, you will be wiser. You will be more discerning. You will be more watchful. And best of all, and I truly believe this, John, because you and I have both experienced it, as has anybody else really who's in a space of coaching others and supporting others. you will become stronger to the degree where you can see and guide other people through the painful process. Something you've already been through. You've come out on the other side strong, wise, even maybe a little more successful in a specific area. You can and will then be able to guide somebody else by the hand through the painful process that they're experiencing to that final beautiful outcome. Right? It doesn't have to be a wasted 2 years. It can have been very valuable for you, whether it be a relationship, a marriage, a job. It can have been, yes, painful. Acknowledge that. It's important to tell the truth, but it can have also been very beneficial, and you will be able to guide and support and impart to others what you've learned. And there is some gold in that, I believe.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yes. It's just have a ball doing it all, right?
Yes.
I do. I have a ball because, of course, I have the background for it, but in the experience. But it is
Yeah.
fun to watch it. It just
Yes.
is. Just get a charge out of how often it shows up.
Yeah. Well, as it relates to your coaching, John, before we part ways, I want to make sure people understand you are in the coaching space
Yes.
and you coach people, but you also coach very large businesses and organizations towards success. So, do you want to talk about that for a
Yes.
minute? And
Small to medium-sized businesses. So go way back in the early in the mid '80s when I started doing business. Um, I thought making $100,000 was a big business. It's not. It's not. And then when I started doing in the millions, thinking that, oh, that's got to be big business. Well, no, my accountant said, John, that's not big business. So it's all relative.
yes.
So working with organizations at anywhere from half a dozen folks to several hundred folks. That's kind of my sweet spot.
Mhm.
And that is relatively small business, relatively speaking. So the thing is, if you're going to make what I discovered that the bigger the business in the millions and multi-millions and billions, they have their own systems in place. It's very challenging sometimes for someone like myself to get in there.
Mhm.
And I've been there, and it's a very different atmosphere. Very, very different. They didn't get to be in the hundreds of millions and billions of dollars for nothing.
Right.
They've got it down pat. It's the companies that don't have it that I'm most successful with.
Hmm.
So all my best audience are the managers. As much as I'd love to work with the worker bees, if the managers are horrible, then the organization's gonna suffer.
Yeah, for sure.
For sure. Yeah.
Mhm. So,
So
if
that's just some
somebody
from experience.
Yeah, you've got a lot of experience and you've got great experience coaching a multitude of groups,
Yes.
from people to nonprofit organizations to businesses. You've got a very wide range. So if somebody wanted to get a hold of you, how could they do that?
Let me give my phone number for now. My website's almost done, so it's under
Awesome.
construction now.
Waiting for
Revamping
that
it.
website.
Oh, I can't wait. Yeah. And so my phone number is 603-244-2318. And just shoot me a text or call me and we can talk. I'll talk to anybody, really. Just
Yeah.
you make a difference with one person. Sometimes I see success with one session.
Yes.
All it takes sometimes is one little epiphany of self-awareness, and then they're off and running.
Such a good point. It's that little
Sometimes,
light bulb, that little
yes,
spark
yeah,
that starts changing the
yeah.
direction or
Mhm.
trajectory of what they're doing.
And if it's a
It's
business
amazing.
owner, then and almost immediately on my initial consultations, if the business owner feels like they're in a good place, a lot of times they are, is they bring me in for their managers.
Mm.
And that's the sweet spot, working with the managers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah, thank you.
So powerful and
Very powerful.
dynamic in terms of what you've been able to accomplish. I know. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing time with me and my friends on the podcast. And we will definitely do this again. Thanks so much for listening to The Stephanie Stevens Show. Please remember to subscribe so we can stay connected and you never miss an episode of the podcast. Oh, and if you haven't left a rating yet, please be sure to do so. It helps incredible people like you find the podcast. We'll see you on the next episode.